Flores.
And how are you all doing? And I'd like to present to you my very best friend. And a lady, no, who can really know how to have fun in a wonderful way. A good friend, Sister Rosemary. Hey!
We're really pleased to come, and this is about my 4th year of coming, and Betty's come before. We are very good friends. We've been friends for years. We made Leadership Texas together many, many years ago, and she's promised not to tell you any stories, and they're going to take us off camera if we say anything that's not appropriate. Is that true?
Thank you, Robert.
Excellent. But we're real pleased to be here today, and we're just going to talk a little bit how our lives have been different, but actually they've been very, very much the same. So Betty's going to start with a few comments, and we'll be bouncing back and forth, telling us where we're from, where we came. She's going to tell you some of her experience. I don't know, but she's been on what is the Federal Bank?
The Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve Bank board. That's where they make all these big decisions. She's been in some really prestigious roles as a woman that a lot of people don't know about, because she does things quietly and wants to just get things done. So, but I don't think a lot of people know, and you're on a very prestigious board right now. Well, also Mercy Ministries, but also the others. So we're here. We're only going to be a short time. It's an honor for us to be here. So thank you. I know you wonder what 2 little old ladies are going to tell you. We got a lot.
She's the old lady. I'm not. She's a 2 little lady. No, I'm kidding.
I'm 68.
We're the same age.
We're 68. Oh, and we love it. Betty.
Just to sort of set the stage for you all of how far women have come in your day and age, I want to take you back a little bit, okay? And I want you to understand in today's world if this would happen. So pardon me for reading this, but I'm going to read it because it's very important. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the man Victor Hugo. Okay, you're going to understand who he is. The city of Paris, France. Okay, this is the setting. The year was 1848. The issue before the Legislative Assembly of Parliament was universal suffrage. One of the parliamentarians was a well-known novelist. His name was Victor Hugo. Universal suffrage was a controversial issue, principally because it meant giving women the right to vote. The galleries of the Parliament were filled with spectators interested in the outcome of the debate. One day, after many hours of discussions and deliberations, Victor Hugo respectfully requested the floor. This was granted, and he spoke as follows. Man is the most elevated of all creatures. Woman is the most sublime of all ideals. God made for man a throne, and for woman an altar. The throne exalts, the altar sanctifies. Man is the brain, woman is the heart. The brain generates light, the heart produces love. Light germinates, love resuscitates. Man is strong because of his reasoning. Woman is invisible because of her tears. Reasoning is convincing. Tears are moving. Man is capable of all heroism. Woman of all martyrdom. Heroism makes man noble. Martyrdom makes woman sublime. Man has supremacy. Woman has preference. Supremacy signifies might. Preference represents right. Man is a genius. Woman is an angel. A genius cannot be measured. An angel cannot be defined. Man's maximum aspiration is supreme glory. Woman's maximum aspiration is extreme virtue. Glory makes all things great. Virtue makes all things divine. Man is a code of ethics. Woman is a book of gospels. The code of ethics corrects. The book of gospel perfects. Man thinks, women dream. To think is to have a larva within your head. To dream is to have a halo around your head. Man is an ocean. Woman dreams. And woman is a lagoon. The ocean has the pearl which adorns. The lagoon has the poetry which illuminates. Man is an eagle that soars through the air. Woman is a nightingale that sings in the dark. To soar through the air is to dominate space. To sing in the dark is to conquer souls. Man is a temple. Woman is the tabernacle. Before the temple, we remove our hats. Before the tabernacle, we drop to our knees. And when all has been said and done, you will find man situated where earth ends, and women where heaven begins. With these eloquent words, Hugo finished his discourse and returned to his seat. A deep silence fell upon the chamber. No one moved or made a sound as if pondering what had just been heard. At last, the dean of the legislators, the man of many years' experience and respected by all, rose to his feet. He looked over the audience, the legislators, and the general public. He bowed his head, then raising his eyes, he spoke. As our distinguished young colleague has so eloquently stated, between man and woman there exists very small difference. He was going to continue, but some fan in the galleries, taking his last remark as a cue, yelled out on the top of his lungs, Viva la Diferencia! In French, Vive la Différence. And then, as an echo from the other end of the chamber, another voice shouted. Before you knew it, everyone in the legislative hall, and yelling in unison that phrase that was to go down in history, Vive la Différence. When things finally calmed down, the issue was brought to a vote and approved unanimously. From that day, the women of France had had the right to vote. Their good fortune was having the eloquence of Victor Hugo. Did you know that the United States of America, although considered one of the most advanced democracies in the world, took another 72 years, older than us, to give American women their right in 1920? And did you know that our neighbor Mexico waited yet another 33 years before granting this privilege to Mexican women in 1953? Vive la différence. Do you see how fortunate you are for all these things that have happened and all these women that have come before you? That is why we celebrate Women's History Month. That is why. Not because we're saying women are better than men, but because it was never recognized that we were equals. And we wanted to be recognized as equals. As Sister Rosie said, I was a banker for 29 years. I was the first woman to be senior vice president of a bank that was 100 years old. And it wasn't because nobody was capable, it was just never thought about. It was never thought, it was like, oh, her, she. It was just assumed that the women were going to be tellers and secretaries and the men were going to be officers. It was assumed. I always say never assume anything and always have plan B. My plan was to let no one and no assumptions stop me. It worked for me. I can't tell you that I went home miserable every night because I had a wonderful time. It was a wonderful place to work. But every day I did something to chip away at that assumption. Every day. And eventually it paid off. And I have done great things. And when I retired, I went home and I sat there and I thought about it and I said, you know, I have great contacts at the state level. I have great contacts at the federal level. Through the bank had given me the opportunity. Why am I going to sit home and not use that opportunity and let it go to waste when my community deserves it? The people of Laredo deserve it. The children of Laredo need me to be their leader, to go out and find what I can at the state and federal level and to fight for them. And that's when I decided to run for mayor. And you know what somebody said? Is Laredo ready for a woman mayor? And I never answered that question. Never. Because I don't think the question was proper. Not in Laredo, not in Texas, not in the United States of America. Not anywhere, as you can see from Victor Hugo. But you, every one of you in this room, has to remember on your own that it's up to you to chip away a little bit at a time. Do you know that Laredo was 250 years old when I became mayor? It took that long. I was the first Hispanic woman to be mayor of a major city in the United States. That was not, great for Betty Flores, great for Laredo. But what happened? We are a growing population. What happened? Why are we asleep? Today I ask you all to wake up. Wake up, because Sister Rosie's going to tell you some stories that will get to your heart about how far she has come and what she has done. She never rests, this lady. She's full of energy. I bet you that at 68 years old, she can run faster than any of you all. And she can think faster, and she can tell better jokes. Y'all give her another big hand.
Thank you very much, Betty. And I made a mistake when I introduced her. See, how many people would have said, let's say Mayor Raul Salinas was here. How many people would have introduced him as a man, the mayor of Laredo? Nobody. But I said the first woman mayor. So do you see the difference? We would have had to distinguish. Okay, here's our mayor who's a man. People look at me, we are crazy. Of course he's a man, because we don't expect it sometimes. And I think that's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up. And the whole thing about voting, I hadn't thought this. We have the vote. I think that the voting, the bill, civil rights voting, it was in 67 or 68 that it passed, that everybody could vote, because that it used to be the African Americans and Hispanics couldn't vote. You had to pay a poll tax. So people that were brown or black or didn't look like me didn't have the right to vote. And that passed. It was after President Kennedy was assassinated, and Lyndon Johnson went back and got the vote through. It was actually a miracle, because people still thought that people who were black and people who were brown could go to war and fight for us, could go to war and give their lives for us, but they weren't smart enough to vote. In fact, there was a young soldier killed in the Second World War, and they brought him home. And I can't remember the city in Texas, but they brought him home to be buried. And he was a hero, and he was Hispanic, and he was very dark. And his name, let's say it's anonymous. I can get you the information later. So they took him to church, and they had the ceremonies, and nobody thought, where were they going to bury him? Had a beautiful mass and a celebration, and when they were finished, they were ready to take him off to the cemetery. And they said, he can't go to that cemetery. Why? Because he was Hispanic, because he was brown. He couldn't be buried in a cemetery with people that looked like me. but he could go to war and was killed in war because he was an American citizen. It wasn't until about 8 years later, maybe my little details are a little foggy, but it was actually Truman, that they buried him out on the ranch someplace. But they were able, because they kept after it, chipping away at a horrible lie of our country. He's buried at Arlington Cemetery. And the whole family went to that cemetery. But that's a beautiful ending to a horrible story. But he should have been buried in his hometown. So his mom and his dad and his brothers and sisters could have visited him. How are they going to afford to be going to Washington? What a horrible blight on our country. Because he was black. Because he was actually brown, like most of you. And I tell that story because even now, during this last election, people are trying to take the vote away from people, minority groups. The Asians, African Americans, and Hispanics. And unless individuals like yourselves stand up, get educated, become citizens, and vote. I don't care who you vote for, Republicans or Democrats, but get off your comas and llamas and vote. It's going to happen because they want to take the vote away from minorities. And how they can call the fastest growing group, the Hispanics, a minority, is a big joke to me, because you're actually the majority. And the African Americans and the Asians voted this last time. They thought they could keep the folks away from the voting. But they're already going about ways that they're going to keep people, and people elderly like myself, unless I have proper documentation. This was not part of my talk, my presentation, but I think it's something that you need to wake up. And I was at a meeting recently. Actually, I had a great experience. I was at President Obama's inauguration. I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I mean, it was history. But we went to a meeting, and us Texans had a good time. Anyway, they had a party for everybody that was from Texas. But we were all talking, and Senator West, who is from, State Senator West, I believe he's from Houston, he said, "Sister, things aren't going to change unless you go home and talk to the people from South Texas to vote." We have 110,000 people who can vote in this community that are registered to vote. You know how many people voted? 30,000. Now that's a sin. Where when I lived in Guatemala and in southern Mexico, people would die. They would walk. They would go through the mountains. They would come in out of the aldeias, the colonias, as they call them, villages, and walk for miles and be actually threatened to be killed so they could vote. When in South Africa, the apartheid, and when the Africans the South African black population got the right to vote, they stood in line for days in the heat to vote. And here in Laredo, men and women don't have the guts and the courage and the selflessness to get out and vote. 30,000 people out of 110,000, that is a disgrace. Go home and ask your parents tonight, and your grandparents, and your aunts, and your uncles, did you vote? And if they didn't, ask them why not. And some of them don't vote because they're here with legal permanent residence, but they haven't gone the next step to become a citizen. I understand it's hard. It costs money. It's difficult. The test can be discriminatory because they ask questions I couldn't answer. If I went and they asked me some of those questions, I couldn't remember the answers. But you've got to become to stand up and to vote. And if you are here without documentation, there are papers now for you. This isn't my talk at all. I'm going to go into it anyway. The immigration. If you came with your parents, and your parents are not here with documentation, and you are here, and you can prove, and you're in school, and you stayed out of trouble, there's a new memorandum that came out from the president about 9 months ago. They called it Deferred Action for Children Arrivals. If you came years ago and have been in this country and you do not have papers, there is a law that you can pursue and get your papers. It's a little scary because you have to come out of the shadows, so to speak. You have to be able to say, and you can call me, they know how to get a hold of me, and I can tell you where you can go. And we're working with some lawyers. We're working with 8 young people right now who in about 2 months are going to have a permission to work. They're going to be able to go to college and get some funding. But hope to God that they'll take the next step and study to become legal permanent residents and this for citizens. The Hispanic population, if you really care about this country, are going to be the leaders of the country. And if you don't care, God help our country. Because I think sometimes we're walking down the wrong path. And if we don't begin to welcome people, and I imagine some of you in this room think, well, who are those black kids? What are they doing? Are the Asians? Are the Asians don't like the blacks, and the blacks don't like the Hispanics? We're all one group. And you've got to learn how to be able to look at folks and not discriminated against them. And why am I talking about this? Because I'm white. I have never experienced discrimination like I have friends that have. Betty has. I have a dear friend who's a Sister of Mercy and has been a Sister of Mercy for 50 years. She's been a leader in our community. She's from Brownsville, Texas. She is very, very dark. Her first language was Spanish. She speaks perfect English. And she was the first Mexican-American president of my religious community, the Sisters of Mercy. First Spanish-speaking president. She was the first person to be on our committee in Washington. And not too long ago, we were at the airport. And we're leaving. We're going to Washington. She's going to a big meeting. I was going to a meeting with Customs and Border Patrol. She was going to a huge meeting of the Sisters of Mercy. And we were staying on for the inauguration. We're at the airport. You know how they ask you? Well, I don't know if any of you follow, but where are you from? Actually, you don't have to answer that question, but you better answer it or they're going to hold you up. Okay, so a lady is in front of my friend Maria Luisa, who is lily white and looks like me. The Border Patrol are really nice to her. And they say, hello, how are you? They didn't even ask her name. Checked her through, right on through. Sister Maria Luisa gets up there. Ellos empiezan a hablar con ella en español. ¿Cómo se llama usted? ¿Dónde nació? ¿Y dónde va a ir? ¿Y por qué van a ir a Washington? Porque I got it. No. ¿Y qué fecha nació? ¿A qué se dice eso? ¿Esa es su fotografía? ¿Pueden escribir su nombre? ¿Pueden decirme cómo está escrito su nombre? Todas las preguntas en español. My friend, who's been discriminated against so many times, just answered the questions and she answered them in English. It comes my time. I am mad as all get out. So they asked me, Sister Rosemary, it's so nice to see you. I said, yo lo siento mucho, pero prefiero español. Okay, ¿cómo? Se prefiero español. Well, se puede pasar. And you can pass, sister. No, mi nombre es hermana Rosa María. Nací en Springfield, Missouri. Voy a Washington para asistir en una reunión. Y ustedes no tienen derecho a preguntarme. ¿Y por qué no están haciendo las mismas preguntas a la otra señora, Anglo, y a mi amiga, todo en español, y a mí, nada? Oh, what is this your business? Do you see the discrimination? It's still happening. And only if we stand up, get out there and vote, and stand up for your buddies who are different colors, and stand up in the school of people that are being bullied. It's a form of bullying. But how many times do we bully people in our own schools? Because they're either too heavy, or they're too fat, or they walk to this, or they're too thin, or they don't talk. So we all have a huge responsibility to make this school the best school, and to make our city and our country better. And why do I live in the South. I live close to here. I live close to Figueroa High School. I live in La Calle de Monterrey in New York Street. I am so proud to live in the South. But how many times do people tell me, oh, you live in El Sur. Oh, you have problems, sister? No, I've lived over there 20 years, and I've never had any problems. But it's because of that discrimination of where we live. Well, the kids are great to me, my neighbor. People take care of us. We had an accident a couple of months ago where some guys, young kids, were drinking and on drugs, and they went zipping down the street. They did a wheelie like this, and they went dashing through our fence and broke the whole gate. I mean, the whole fence went whoop. The cars in our driveway, close to where I live, in our El Patio. So the police called, and they had 5 cars and everything. You know who chased the kids down? One of our neighbors. Got in the car and chased after them. What did you do to the sister's home? One of the other neighbors called the police. Some other neighbor called the gas company because the gas was leaking everywhere. People take care of us. I've never had a problem. I lived there by myself for 10 years. Sometimes I'd fall asleep in the chair with the door open. And people would come and knock on, sister, you better, time to go to bed, shut the door, good night. But people sometimes in the South. And when people use the kind of language, and have you ever heard this on the news? Oh, the economy is going south. That's a racist statement. The economy is going south, which means it's bad. I say, no, it's going north. But y'all are idiots. No. But the thing is, but you see, it's a subtle type of talking. Or the kids, the people with the white hats are the good people, and the people with the black hats are the bad people. The difference, it's the difference between black and white. What's good? White. No, I say, no, it's gray. Now, what are you talking about, sister? It's our language. Nuestro lenguaje, how we put people down. I can talk, the time I was discriminated against is I am 68 years old. You see how tall I am? Almost 5'10". I was 5'10" when I was 12 years old. And people used to make fun of me. Because I was so tall and so thin. A little pencil. But people used to make fun because I was tall at 12. You know, I look back on it now, how stupid, why did I both and hurt my feelings? But it did. And then I got a little chunky, so now I was not only tall, I was a little chunk. Made fun of me. So but you know, why do we care? You care about what is in the person's heart. And I think that's very important. All of you, I'm on my hands and knees begging you, be nice to each other. What good does it make you feel better to make fun of somebody else? Little clicks, somebody walks down the aisle, hey, look at this person. No. Do you want that to happen to you? And I think we could make it so much better. You have a great opportunity to make United South the best school in town.
Is it the best school in town?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah. What kind of enthusiast should say, you're right, it's the best school. I hate it when you're playing basketball or football or something and you don't win. That's just one small thing. I hate when I see the things that talk about all these students that do wonderful things. I want to see you and they're academically doing well, sports doing well. But you don't have to be winners. You just have to try. And I think that's where I had trouble when I was 12 years old, this tall, like a pencil. I had too much energy. I could have gotten in so much trouble. I was the youngest of 4. My father had a drinking problem. We had problems at home. My sister left me and went off to the convent. I felt like I was ugly. I felt like I was stupid, and I was always in trouble in school. But I was always a leader. People would follow me. And so not only did I get in trouble, I got everybody else in trouble too. And the parents would be calling my mom and said, what is your daughter doing? They're in trouble again. So my mom said, oops, we got to do something with this. I started doing volunteer work when I was 12. It changed my life. Putting that energy into helping other people. And I worked with un asilo para personas de una edad avanzada. I love those older people. And they taught me how to be a better person. I'm a nurse because of that. And then later I became a nun. And the nuns, I mean, it's changed so much because I used to wear a habit, very strict. We're very strict now, but not by what we wear. We're very strict now, but not that we can't talk to people outside of a different area. We're very strict now, but we don't have to just be nurses or teachers. We're very strict now because we take certain vows, vocals. Poverty, chastity, and obedience. And the fourth one is of service. So it doesn't matter if I do not go out and talk to people. If I don't, as a nurse, take health care out to the colonias and the barrios where nobody cares to take it. Nobody cares to take it because nobody pays. We're out there and we're encouraging people to take care of themselves. Because I'm a sister of mercy now, we open Casa de Misericordia, which is a domestic violence shelter. And that's following my vow of service. So many people, and I'm criticized in this community by some people because I'm not Catholic enough. I'm not wearing a habit. And they don't see me talking about God. And they don't see me talking against all sorts of other issues. But hopefully, by my life, as a woman, as a religious, and someone who cares so much about this community, my life speaks of God. What I do when I'm nice to people speaks of God. When I go the extra mile and go to court with somebody and fight for the rights of some young child who was beaten up by his stepfather, who wanted to leave his house, but they said he couldn't because he was only 16 years old. And I go to court with him and I said, he has every right. He has every single right to do what he wants to do. That's stepping out of your comfort zone. Sometimes it would be much easier for me to be, I think, well, maybe I'll put on a habit, maybe I'll do something else. But when I think that we all, so I think what Betty and I and the message we're trying to get out to you today is really use your skills the way you can. And somebody was talking to me when I came in, you're in a creative writing class. You should be, but you're listening to two beautiful women. And somebody said, well, I don't really like it. You've got to learn how to write and do it well. Because it's going to depend if you're going to have a successful life. Successful means that you're going to be able to get in to do things that you want to do. You need to learn both languages and be proud that you speak Spanish. Be proud where your parents came from and that you're Hispanic or African American or Asian or from India and that you're able to speak both languages. That you've got to, and the creative writing really many times tells you who you are as a person. And I was sharing with them, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I had trouble with school. I'm here to tell you, I struggled. I struggled to become a nurse. One nun, and God, my mother got so mad at her. A nun, when I was a sophomore, told my mom, told me first, you are too stupid. You are too stupid to ever be a nurse. You better realize that, Rosie. You don't have the smarts. Be a nurse assistant. Nothing's wrong with being a nurse assistant, but I wanted to be a nurse. I went home and I cried. I said, Mom, she told me I'm too stupid. My mom got up there and she said, don't you dare tell my Rosie she can't do something. Why don't you encourage her? So I got into nurses training, but it was hard. I always struggled with it. I had trouble with sciences, go figure, and I wanted to be a nurse. But I had a big heart, and I have a lot of common sense. And I could see a person and sometimes tell what was wrong with them before the people that were so smart could do it. Because I listened to people, and I used other skills. But how dare anybody ever tell you you can't do something? And you're only going to be the biggest obstacle in your life as a man or as a woman is going to be if you don't believe in yourself. And if you don't believe in yourself, find somebody, a friend, a teacher, a counselor, that can give you the support. Because looking at you, and I hate to put this on you, you are the future of South Laredo. You're the future of our community, Laredo, and of Texas, and of our country. And if you don't stand up to the plate, God help our country. Because the two of us are going to check out sometime soon. I hope to live to be 90, but you never know. But I think you all need to stand up. Freshmen, sophomores, whatever age you are, make a commitment today, I'm going to do better. And when you go home tonight, ask your parents if they voted, but also tell them how much you love them. Because you never know what might happen to them tomorrow. You might think your parents aren't as smart. You're embarrassed what your parents do. You might do that, but your parents love you. And if they came from another country, they came here to make it better for all of you. And don't wait till something happens to them to say, oh, I love my mom and I love my dad. Respect them, help them, and I think by that you'll make our community and your family better. Did I talk too much?
No, Rosie, Sister Rosie talked about diversity and inclusion. And when you're a woman or you're a man, those two words should be very important to you. When you are a girl or a boy, a student, those two words should be very important to you. Diversity and inclusion. Because that is the true future of this country. If we as a community here in school, and as a community in South Laredo, and as a community in Laredo, Texas, and the nation can focus on diversity and inclusion, all of us, a little bit at a time, chip away, we will be stronger. We know we've taken some hard paths, so we don't want you to have those troubles. But you will have troubles of your own. Today, when you're in class, build on your strengths. Get stronger. You think, what's one day, what's one class? You'll be surprised. You'll look back one day and you'll say, I remember when. I remember that. Or you remember a teacher or somebody told you something. Not like the sister that told Sister Rosie, although she remembers. Remember also those positive reinforcements that you get from your teachers and from your parents and from your friends. When somebody says, hey, dude, I like your hoodie. That's reinforcement. That makes you feel good. Remember that the next time you feel bad. Because that's what makes you strong. You are who you are, and you're an individual. And that's what I always focused on. Okay, they didn't like the fact that I was a woman, but I'm here. And I was the best candidate. And I've done a lot of things. Today, I am the first Hispanic woman ever to serve on the board of the Farm Credit Bank of Texas. Most of you have never heard of this bank because all of the financing is in rural areas. We lend to farmers and ranchers who are putting food on your table. The food does not come from the H-E-B or Walmart. It comes from the farmers and the ranchers of this country. And we lend to them. My bank has 17 branches all across 5 states. I am on the board of a $16 billion bank. And I am the first Hispanic woman to ever serve on that board since it was established by Congress in 1916. Think about it. And I don't borrow money from them, so I'm not one of the owners. It's a cooperative. That means that all the people that borrow money from us own us. They own those $16 billion. So we're run by our owners. There are 6 other board members, all men. They're borrowers. I'm not a borrower. I'm an outside director. I was appointed by these 6 men. And I have brought to the table ideas. I have brought to the table a diversity of ideas based on my experience and my life experience in this community where we are the majority. My married name is Flores. My father's name is Garcia. My mother's name was Lopez. I have a long line of Hispanics. But remember, Texas was part of Mexico before it was part of the United States. So a lot of it say, no, pues, they're from another country. No. The people outside of Texas are from another country. We've always been from here. Always. We have more power. But Sister Rosie talked about voting. You know what helped me when I went to Congress and what hurt me when I went to Congress? And I said, I would like for you all to help us pave this road because we're going to have a new school. And they'd go check. You know what they check, those politicians? How many people voted in that community? What is her strength? behind her. I only got 30,000 people behind me instead of 110,000. That's what they look at. You know, I go in there all, and then I look back. And they would say, obviously the rest of the people don't want this road.
Don't care.
And don't care. So we'll give the money to somebody else. Your vote counts. It doesn't matter if your candidate doesn't get elected. Your vote counts because they know that you were there. Showing up is 80% of the success of whatever you're going to do. Showing up. The fact that you all are in school today and in this class, you're already successful because you showed up. Think about how many kids didn't show up because, they were too lazy. It's just school. They're missing out. You know why we are successful? Because we showed up every time, even if they didn't want us to be there. We showed up. Even if their faces were long, they didn't want to hear, blah, 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 you know what we had to say? We kept talking. We kept saying. We kept changing. And we kept changing things that happened. That has been the true story of our life. When somebody writes your life story, what will they say about you? Think about it. What will they say about you tomorrow if they had to write your life story? Is it going to be a fun story? Is it going to be something I would want to read? Is it going to show somebody that has strength, that someone that has determination? Or is it going to show about somebody that's just lazy, just kind of, day to day? Think about your life story. I know what Sister Rosie's life story is going to be. I would love to read every page, especially the jokes she tells. I know what my life story is going to be, and I don't think it has had an ending yet. I don't think I've done enough. Every day I go home and I think, geez, I should have done this. Maybe I ought to run for another office. Maybe I ought to get another job. Maybe I ought to do this. Maybe I ought to do that. Don't you think like that? That's the way you all should think. That is success. And you can manage it. Women's History Month is the history of our country. It's the history of mankind that we're talking about. Because without women, there would be no history. There would be no history without women. So that is why it's so important that you all celebrate the women in your life, the girls in your life, and the men and the boys who value those lives. Thank you all for having me and for me. Thank you.